Good morning. Welcome back to meetrabbits.org. I know it's been a minute. We've been busy with gardens and the Memorial Day weekend and transitioning into the spring and summer and, just general life on the farm, in the rabbitry, in the garden, around the home. Oh, and some work too. But I thought we'd check in today on the litters that we've got going of grow outs, the kits that are still with their moms, mostly the champagnes. They are 5 weeks old. So we're kind of in that phase where with the last sets of champagnes, we had some difficulties. So I thought we'd check in, find out what we're seeing in those litters now, and, talk about just some different thoughts and plans as we move on. So I took a few weights. I didn't weigh every single individual because at this point, you take Rose's litter here. We've got 7 identical little babies in there. They're not tattooed. They're not marked. So even if I weighed them all, it would give me a good litter average. It would show me where everybody's at, but it wouldn't really say much for them as individuals. They'll be 6 weeks in another week. And I'm hoping to maybe move them out to either a transition cage or individual cages. Haven't decided yet. And if I move them to individual cages, then I'd be able to follow them as individuals. But that's just to say that I did take a couple weights so we could kind of see where we're at with them a little bit as we go through and talk about what these litters are doing. So I guess I'll start with Rose. So Rose, we have 7. If I remember right, I think she had that one. Well, I do remember right. She had the one that we suspect was probably a little bit of spina bifida that was a cull, but a nice big litter, and everyone else has done well from then. So that is something that I am, keeping track of, keeping note of, and with her in future litters, just we'll be making some decisions on where we want to go with that, whether I cross her with a different buck to see if it happens again. She had a litter before when I didn't see that, so I'm not convinced that it's necessarily her. If you look up spina bifida, the jury's kind of out on it, and that's kind of interesting for something that's been around not only in rabbits but in all sorts of different animals and in humans. And a lot of that actually points, I guess probably some of the heavier research points more towards a nutritional deficiency. So I've got everyone on the 16%. I guess that could be one thought why I hadn't seen it before the champagnes, like in litters with Californians and New Zealanders. Maybe it's because I was on an 18% and maybe the nutritional profile on that is a little better. I do think the 16% I'm feeding is good, but maybe she needs that boost. It was also a large litter. So I guess if they maybe were kind of on the cusp there, then a large litter is going to demand more than, say, like Peony, who had, 5 in this litter. So, you're adding 3 more babies. You're adding 3 more babies in the womb that are that much more of a draw. So thinking forward to her next pregnancy, I'm probably going to look into adding some folate into the diet just to kind of support and help and see what comes of it. By the way, if anyone has a good source of folate, if you've used it with your rabbits, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know who's used what's a good source and what's a good way to feed that. So I took just 4 random ones out of her cage, took some weights on them. And again, we're at 5 weeks, a little shy of 5 weeks, I think, but we're right around 5 weeks. And our weights are 1 pound 13. Actually, 2 of them weighed 1 pound 13 ounces. 1 weighed 1 pound 10 ounces. 1 weighed 1 pound 11. So that puts them in a very good range at this point. I also would note that because they're a larger litter, I'm not surprised or disappointed if they're a little bit smaller than, say, a litter that only has 3 to 5 competing in that cage, or 3 to 4. I don't think we have anyone with 5 in it right now. So all in all, she's looking pretty good. Peony up here So Peony has 4 in here, and we had some excellent rates of growth on hers. But again, there are only 4 in the cage competing, so almost half as many animals. So not really surprised that they're a little larger. We had, out of the 2 that I just randomly grabbed, we had a 2 pound and a 1 pound 15 ounce baby. So both of them basically 2. And then we get down to Lily. Let me see what Lily's here. And hers were registering. Gotta find my note. So we had a little more variation in these 3, and I'll get to why there's 3 in here in a minute. 1 pound, 12 ounce. So that's an excellent rate. 2 pounds, 1 ounce, really excellent growth rate, and 1 pound, 8 ounce, which is probably a little smaller than I would expect to see in such a small litter, but still not bad. Still in a good range of growth. And then, just because we're still talking weights, to top it off, we'll come down to Dandelion's litter. And these guys, actually, I anticipated that they would be the smallest of them all. Because these Californians tend to be a little slower growing. Those Champagnes are very fast growing. And these Californians, they come out to be a nice meaty carcass, but a lot of times they take a little bit longer to get there, or they're just a little smaller, but they're good and meaty. So her kits actually were 1 pound 10 ounce and 1 pound 11 ounce. I only weighed 2 of them because that's what I could easily grab, and then by the time I came back in here, I couldn't have told who the other ones were anyway. So they're in a very good range. I'm actually really happy with them. That's a really nice rate of growth for them. You know, again, maybe they are erring a little bit on the smaller side. There's 5 in here, but they're the Californians, and I'm just not surprised, but I'm also not disappointed. It's not a bad growth rate, so nothing bad to say there. So now let's talk about some of the issues we saw last time and whether we're experiencing them again. We talked about the spina bifida, but that was actually a first in this rabbitry anyway. The issues we had last round were that at around 1 month, kind of weaning time, I had some diarrhea, some deaths, and then I had some that I culled because of diarrhea. So, haven't seen full-blown diarrhea yet, but I did come out last week and I had 1 kit that was dead, that obviously I removed right away. And then these guys seem almost a little bit bloaty, so I'm keeping a real good eye on them. I am, again, this is something I'm only seeing in Champagnes. Those Californians, like, there's just nothing. I haven't seen any sign of anything questionable or untoward at all in these. And I'm kind of running again on the theory that it's the, you know, again, we've said in many videos that these Champagnes were said to be kind of protein sensitive. So I'm wondering if it's some sort of issue that they have this fast growth rate and they really start hogging down once they start on the pellets, and that's why I see a little bit of this at like 4-ish weeks. So what am I doing about it? Obviously I'm packing in the hay. I've also been mixing some oats into the pellets, which they actually really like the taste of, so there's barely any left in there, but the oats are a little lower protein than the pellets. I don't want to get rid of the pellets completely because I want the good balanced nutrition, and I do want, you know, them to get the protein for the growth and body support. But at this point, I'm not worrying about their growth rate. I'm worrying about keeping them alive and getting them through the weaning stage and, you know, trying to find a way to reduce or eliminate this bloat. Now, there was one other issue that was similar to that last time. Not a digestive issue, but it is something that cropped up at the same time. And it was that there was one, and I think it was in Peony's litter, that had an eye infection, looked like nest box eye, but we were beyond the nest box eye stage, in my opinion, because the nest box was out. Nest box has been out of these guys for weeks. So I hesitate to really call it nest box eye. I would more call it like a pink eye, but it's only one kit. It's one eye. I've been treating it for a few days. If we see one with a red marker mark in its ear, that's the kit, but I'm sure it's kind of got my number, so it kind of isn't as happy to come out and see me. I think it's one of these right here. Anyway, it's clearing up pretty well, but I am treating it. I've been treating it for about 4 days now. It is not completely gone. Looks a lot like nest box eye, but it was a crusty, pussy eye infection that popped up at 4 weeks, right around the same time I lost that other kit. So I don't know if this is related, entirely unrelated, random, weird, poked itself with some hay, or possibly entropion eyelid, where the eyelid is kind of folded under. Now in a meat rabbit, this is not something you're going to pay to fix. There is a fix for it. It's surgical. But in meat rabbits, it's more something that we're going to work on selecting out of the rabbitry and deciding whether this one needs to be culled early or whether we watch it as it grows. Now, last time, I think the one that had it, treated it, and I think it went on to live, and it was not an ongoing thing, which to me says probably not entropion. Now, I have no experience with entropion eyelid at all. I'm not even sure how easy it is to tell if the eyelid is folded. One of the difficulties I'm having is that how do you tell if the eyelid is folded when it's so inflamed and infected and it's under treatment? I feel like that's something that I'd have to kind of look and watch. Yeah, it's hiding from me back here in the corner, but it's the opposite eye, so you're not going to see it. I feel like it's something you have to watch and kind of gauge as you go along. Again, if anyone's got any information to add about that, or experience with it, or tips for how to determine whether it's entropion or it's just an eye infection, let me know. None of the others in the cage have any eye infections. It's only that one. It does seem to be responding to, I'm cleaning it with colloidal silver, and it is getting triple antibiotic. You can see now that it's turning its head. It's that left eye. So you can see that it is clearing. It's not completely closed, but it's slow going, getting it back. Other issue I had in Lily's litter. The other day I had one that I thought looked a little logy, so I took it out to check it out for signs of diarrhea or bloat or anything. Didn't have any totally obvious signs, but what I discovered was that it had a dislocated leg. This was like the day after the kit that I found that was dead, and that kit had no signs of diarrhea or anything, but sometimes that's how it goes with the bloat and the diarrhea. You don't necessarily have signs, especially in the young kits. So I haven't decided what to make of that. The dislocation I felt was something that probably happened, like maybe that same day, maybe even the same day the other one died. Because there, the thing wasn't, I was holding it, it wasn't sore, it wasn't tender, it wasn't screaming. It's just, it had a dislocated leg. So that's obviously something that's not going to go well as the kit grows out. And I tell you, harvesting animals is one thing, but having to cull animals, it's a much harder thing. But I try to do what is right by the animal, and the animal, to me, that was going to be a problem for it growing. It was going to be a source of pain and dysfunction. And so I culled that as a mercy cull. What's a possibility in that cage for both of those deaths? We've had a lot of high winds and storms, some thunderstorms. We had just like a week of just constant high winds, really bad winds. So I don't know, maybe they got scared. Maybe things got jumped around on. Maybe it caught its leg. Maybe it was a combination of that. I really have no idea. It's just, I'm trying to be real with you guys and let you know some of the struggles and things that we've had. And that's what we've had. So my thoughts on them. My thoughts are just, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing with packing in the hay, a little bit of a limitation on pellets, trying to push the oats, and really watching these guys over the next week. Hopefully I'm not going overboard watching and overthinking, but I want to see if we can get through this with few losses. I can't say no losses because we did have that one that was unexplained. And then again, we've got the eye infection. Now, one of the things that I've been looking towards, again, I don't think that I'm married to this idea, is whether or not we possibly have some E. caniculi that's coming out. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that correctly, but you know, that is a parasite that basically they say is pretty endemic in every rabbitry, meaning that everyone probably has it. It's something the rabbits live with, similar to coccidiosis, although I personally think coccidiosis is probably more likely to come out, but not necessarily. And it's one of those things that if the immune systems are low, they get stressed. You know, some of them will respond worse than others. So probably a lot of people are living with this in their rabbitry and always will. Not something that I've run across in 5 years with the New Zealand's and the Californians, but does not mean that that's not there. Maybe the hybrid vigor, since I crossed them up so much, kind of kept that at bay a little bit. Maybe it's a combination of factors with the champagnes. I don't know, kind of spitballing, kind of thinking out loud here. But just curious if anybody else thinks that. And the reason I'm leaning towards that is because we've had the diarrhea in those last litters. Don't see it yet, but I don't know that we're out of the woods with this. And the timing of that, like the death of that kit, and in that litter before, the timing of the diarrhea and the eye infection on those 1 or 2 lined up. It's at the same time. So is this something that during that kind of stressful weaning transition period, even though they're not weaned away from mom, but you know, they obviously are eating and drinking on their own a lot, and I'm not sure if any of these are nursing at all or not. Maybe that period is just causing enough stress that some of them are falling victim to this. So what I'm thinking about doing is, after weaning, possibly doing a sort of prophylactic round of fenbendazole, Panacur, to kind of just preemptively get rid of it if it's there. Maybe even another round of coccidiosis treatment, but we did that last time, so not convinced that I'm doing that yes or no either. So again, spitballing, thinking out loud, really interested to know about anyone else's experiences. The eye infections, again, that I did see that are making me kind of think towards that they honestly look just like this box eye, you know, closed up eye, some pus behind it. But I'm not seeing like falling out over rabbits. I'm not seeing like balance issues. But again, maybe we're just kind of living with it on that low key. So maybe a prophylactic treatment like that would be a good idea. So I guess that's it. I guess that's my update for this for now. And, you know, please offer any questions, comments, just conversation in the comments. You know, we're all here as a supportive meat rabbit community to share information, back each other up, and help each other out. And, you know, I can admit that I'm still learning. I'm still seeing issues that I didn't have before, and these are the things we go through. So that's it for today. Come on over to meatrabbits.org if you haven't see what other information and articles we have over there. Check out more of the videos here. And, you know, again, if you've got questions, comments, or even a topic that you'd like addressed, pop it in the comments. Thanks for being here. Hope that you're finally getting some good kind of moderating seasonal weather. We finally are. We've gone through I think we've run the whole gamut. We started the month out really hot at like 80, and then we went down to last week. We had lows that dipped down into the upper 30s, which is not entirely uncalled for here. But, you know, I'm hoping that we're just getting ready to enjoy some sunshine. We've had way too much rain. We don't need any more of that. Like I said, high winds and storms, ready to be done with that. So hope everyone's having a good spring, and we'll see you back here next time.